We are looking at the coil plugs on the picoscope, and this red line will be our going from the PCM to the coil. This blue line is going from the coil into a junction box back into the PCM. So this blue line is a feedback loop. So we have the information getting sent to the coil and then going back to the PCM saying that the coil fired. As you can see here, it says it fires here, or it's telling it to fire, and then down here, this is the feedback loop. It says that this cylinder or this coil plug has fired. So back here is the coil before this one to fire. And if you want to think about this as a relay, this side will never have the amperage of the coil firing on it. It's only the battery positive and the battery negative on the other side of the coil.
Because the signal return is the same on each ignition coil, you can see here we're able to back probe that on a different ignition coil, even though we're testing for this one. The reason we're doing it on two different ones is so that we avoid shorting it and frying the entire system, because that'd be pretty bad. Here we look at the picoscope readings. We can see right here, this is cylinder 2's signal, and each of these is the signal return for each ignition coil. And if we take a look at all data, it actually gave us a waveform which very similarly matches up almost exactly what we're seeing. So here, looking at our PCM layout, we can see that with the key on, engine off, we should be seeing about 4 to 5.5 volts on the signal return wire of the ignition coil. Right now, key off, engine off, we're getting about 0.4 volts, and Elias is going to turn it key on, engine off. You can see we're getting that reading of 5.13 volts. So we are not going to find a secondary resistance specification on all data. Essentially, this being a 4-wire system, unlike a 2-wire system where you'd be able to check the resistance on the primary side and the secondary side, these ignition coils here are just a battery positive, a battery negative, and then a signal with a transistor inside. There is no real secondary coil that you'd be able to check for resistance. Hey guys, forgive my change of scenery. I'm going to explain to you why you can't use an ohm meter to test resistances on a part of a circuit or a component that isn't isolated. The way your voltmeter works, whether you're doing a voltage at or drop test, is essentially checking the voltage pressure, right, or the difference in pressure thereof. Your ohm meter, on the other hand, is checking for resistance, and the way it does that is it pumps a very small amount of current through that isolated component or the different part of the circuit, and then that goes back to the meter and it's able to read the resistance. When you have a circuit that isn't isolated, you're getting unmetered current into the circuit. The meter doesn't know how much current is already present. That's why you get different resistance readings if you're key off, engine off, key on, engine off, or when the alternator is charging your battery, depending on the part of the circuit that you're looking at. Alright, taking a look at the spark plug, we can see a little bit of carbon, and the tip's a little bit heated. That's fine. This is an iridium spark plug, so we wouldn't want to use a feeler gauge here because that would remove the iridium tip. But overall, that's looking like a good spark plug. Editor's note here, thought I should do a better job at explaining why you can't test the tip. So if you have a copper spark plug, it's easier to check. You can just use a specific gauge or whatever. However, in an iridium spark plug, you have a very fine tip of iridium, and that's how the spark is able to be transferred in that plug. If you erase or if you remove that tip by using your gauge or using it improperly, you totally ruin the ability of the spark plug to create spark or create spark efficiently. So, the Corolla here, it has a coil on plug ignition system, coil, plug. Taking a look to inspect the coil for damage. If we did have any damage that was very noticeable, we would see carbon foul along the outside this rubbery plastic here. Nothing's looking too bad on it, which is to be expected as this vehicle only runs at idle in a lab.